Today we're talking about the conveyance. That's the legal transfer of the title of your home. And I've chosen to speak to Liz from Key 2 Conveyancing in Foster.
Now, an owner can prepare the contract themselves, but given the complexity and the legalities involved, most owners decide to appoint a solicitor or a conveyancer to undertake the work on their behalf. So the contract generally is made up of what we generally call the printed pages 1 to 12. It's published by the Law Society in conjunction with the Real Estate Institute. So it contains the general terms of sale. Also forming part of the contract are the documents that must be attached, and it's really important that they are attached, because if any of them are not attached, the contract can be void. So the first thing that must be attached is a copy of the title for the land, and that describes the legal ownership of the land and any covenants and easements and restrictions that might be affecting the land. You must have a copy of the plan of the land attached, whether it be a deposited plan or a strata plan. A copy of those restrictions and easements and covenants that are registered on the title to the land. Secondly is what people generally call the 1492 or a zoning certificate. That's obtained from the local council, and that describes the zoning of the land and any planning and development controls that may be affecting the land. Thirdly is the drainage diagram. Now that's simply a diagram that you obtain from the sewer authority that shows where the location of the sewer main is in relation to the land that your client owns. Now it's not essential that it show the actual connections, the sewer connections, but a lot of buyers are interested to see that. So we would normally recommend to our clients that they obtain a diagram that does actually show the connections. So they're the three main documents that have to be attached to the contract. Inclusions is a really important part of the sale. On the front page of the contract is a suggested general list of items that will be left at the property. So it's really important when we're preparing the marketing contract for you or for any agent that we go through that list with our clients and find out exactly what it is that's being left at the property. So for example, are they leaving their blinds? Generally most vendors leave their blinds. Curtains, if there are curtains, are they staying? Now, when we're taking their instructions about what they're leaving at the property, we actually also need to know what they think they're going to take as well, because that can sometimes cause a problem. There must be a statement in the contract that relates to a buyer's rights in relation to a cooling off period, what's called a cooling off period. When a vendor sells residential property, the buyer, once the contracts are exchanged, the buyer has a 5-day cooling off period in which they can cool off or rescind for any reason, and they must, if they do that, pay to the seller 0.25% of the sale price. Now the contract must have a specific term setting out those rights and setting out also when the cooling off period doesn't apply, and it won't apply in certain circumstances, particularly at an auction, if a buyer purchases at auction. The contract must also have a statement as to the requirement for a swimming pool to be compliant with the recent or the current swimming pools legislation, which is the Swimming Pools Act 1992. If a vendor of property has a pool, they must ensure before they put it on the market that the pool does actually comply. And generally that means that it must have a child-safe barrier that is securely locked at all times, that basically separates the pool from the property, and it must be constructed and maintained in accordance with the standards of the Australian standards. And thirdly, the contract must contain a statement about the current smoke alarm requirements. What the statement says in the contract, it just draws the buyer's attention to the fact that that is a requirement. One of the really important issues is homeowners warranty insurance. Now, this is really applicable to licensed builders, developers, and more or just as importantly to owner builders. Now, in particular in relation to owner builders, they must have a certificate of homeowners warranty insurance if they sell their property within 6 years of having completed the residential work on the property. And what the insurance is for, of course, is to cover a buyer for structural defects for a period of 6 years and non-structural defects for a period of 2 years. Now, the seriousness, of course, is if that certificate is not attached to the contract, again, the contract can be voided or rescinded by a buyer before settlement. Okay, so land tax is a tax that's levied on an owner of property at midnight on the 31st of December in any year, okay? Properties exempt from land tax would be the person's own home or any land used for primary production. But if you have a seller who owns other properties, a number of properties, they may be, units, apartments, houses, and if the value or the unencumbered value of those properties exceeds the threshold in any given year, and this year, for example, the threshold is $396,000, then they will be liable for land tax. And the marketing contract should state whether or not an adjustment of that land tax is needed. Goods and services tax. Okay, just simply all I'd like to say on that is that it is really crucial to know and really important to know whether your client is selling a property that is liable for GST. And if it is, it must be made known in the marketing contract. And if they're not sure, again, we're not tax agents, we can give our clients some guidance, but they can get some assistance from their accountants and let us know so that the contract is really watertight when we prepare it and there's no room for error in relation to GST.
There you go. Thanks, Liz. That was great. Now, that was the first start. That was the preparation of the contract. So we'll come back and speak to Liz again next week about what happens next.